Welcome to another Mean Streets of Gadgetzan card review. Within the past week, Blizzard has released quite a few more cards from the new set, and I'm going to go over those and sort of give my first impression opinions about them. So without further ado, here we go. I'm going to go over them in no real particular order. Just sort of by class, but not really any other rhyme or reason. So here we go. First up, we have Shaky Zip Gunner. It's a 3-mana 3/3 minion. Not the best stats for a 3-mana card, but not the worst either. Has a death rattle of give a random minion in your hand +2/+2. So, without sort of spoiling sort of some of the rest of the cards, this is becoming a theme of the grimy goons faction of cards, I guess, is to sort of buff cards in your hand. I'm still not even seeing some of these cards, I'm still not sure how powerful they're gonna be, because 3-mana 3/3 isn't great. And this has to die before this effect even happens, and it's gonna happen to a random minion. The other real big issue this card has is that 3-mana slot for Hunter is pretty saturated with very powerful cards already. So, I mean, you'll see an arena for sure, but I'm not so sure about constructed in this card. Maybe in a death rattle deck. I don't know. I mean, there's still some more cards to come out and everything, but I'm gonna say this card's not that great. Who knows? You know, I mean, maybe it'll fill out a spot or something in one of these buff decks, mid-rangey kind of things. I'm not sure. All right. So next card, we have Trog Beast Rager. This card is a 2-mana 3/2 minion, so not terrible stats, decent stats. 3/2 for 2 mana. Battle Cry, give a random beast in your hand +1/+1. So, and it's a rare. So the stats are better on this one, and it's a battle cry, so the effect happens immediately, but still the effect isn't actually doing anything on the board. You know, it's not affecting the board in any way, you're not gaining tempo by it, it's sort of value for future turns. And the other issue with this card is that it's contingent on you having a beast in your hand as well. So it has a few things not going well for it, in my opinion. The fact that it's a random card, the fact that it has to be a beast, it's only a +1/+1. It is a 2-mana minion, so maybe that'll be an argument for including it in some Hunter decks, especially because Hunter decks kind of lack good 2-drops. But with the Kindly Grandmother, I think the 2-drop spot has been pretty much taken by that card, which is a really good card. Like I said, a lot of these cards are going to be buffing random things, and even some of the neutral cards or the tri-cards, tri-class cards have some of the similar effects, so it's possible that this will become a playable card. We'll have to see. In Arena, it's a rare card. It's not great, but it is a 2-drop, so you'll see it in Arena. You're not going to see it as often because it is rare, but you'll see it. So next we have a Dispatch Kodo. This is a 4-mana minion with 2 attack and 4 health. So for 4 mana, not good stats at all. But it has a battle cry of deal damage equal to this minion's attack. And it is a beast. So this is a card that, you know, directly synergizes with the Trog Beast Rager. Or can, at any rate. But again, you know, cards like this are, I mean, even to some degree with the Shaky Zip Gunner, because it's a random minion in your hand, doesn't have to be a beast necessarily. So it has the potential to be a Gormok the Impaler, or even better than a Gormok without it, and it has this battle cry even without Gormok's condition. So it actually is better to some degree just on the face of it, because you're dealing 2 damage right away on the board, right? And if you can buff this with any of these buff cards before you play it, then all the better. it could be good. It could also just be another card that just weighs the deck down and doesn't really do a whole lot. I'm not sure. I like the idea of the card at any rate. I think it's got potential. So we'll have to wait and see about some of the other cards as well still. But it has potential. It is expensive for a 4-drop. And the stats aren't premium. But if you can buff it beforehand, then you know it could be really good. All right, next up we have Rat Pack, which is a epic card. 3 mana 2/2, which is not good at all. But as a death rattle, summon a number of 1/1 rats equal to this minion's attack. I haven't seen the rat cards. I assume they're a beast as well. It's a very slow card. But if you can buff it with some of these buffing cards before you play it, you know, you could potentially have it be a 3 mana 4/4 or something. However, I mean, you really have to get some of these cards off first, and they have to buff this minion and not another one in your hand. I mean, I think the likelihood of you playing this on 3 is not very good, which makes it a slow card in and of itself. And then it has a death rattle effect, and it's conditional. Well, to get true value out of it, it's conditional upon its attack value, right? So, as it is, I guess you're getting technically 4 of stats over 3 bodies at the very minimum without having it buffed at all. The other thing about this card though, just to sort of sidetrack, is that it can be buffed even when it's on the board. So because it is a death rattle, it just has to be buffed before it dies, right? So that's even, I think that would even include temporary buffs such as Direwolf Alpha, Abusive Sergeants, and Dark Iron Skulker, stuff like that. As long as it dies and it has the attack value, you'll get that many rats out of it. So, I don't know, it could be a decent card. However, again, it suffers from the same thing that the Shaky Zip Gunner suffers from, in that it is a 3-drop, and Hunter is full of very good 3-cost cards. So, you're gonna have to... This is going to be a fairly different kind of Hunter deck to some degree, because you're going to have to thin out some of those 3-cost cards that are really good. You know, Eaglehorn Bow, Animal Companion, Kill Command. Those 3 right there typically take up 6 card spots in your Hunter deck. So yeah, I think it's going to be difficult trying to find room for these things, but yeah, we'll see. All right, and next card we have the Rogue Legendary. Is a 3 mana 2/3, which is, at least, you know, it's keeping in line with the whole low cost legendary thing that I kind of like. Its ability is it has stealth, which we all know stealth is very powerful. Then it says, whenever this attacks, add a random card to your hand from your opponent's class. So this is basically like a Swashbuckler, a Burgle, all those cards that, you know, basically give you random class cards from your opponent's class. But this happens anytime you attack. There's no condition of killing anything or damaging anything. All it has to do is attack. So it's unfortunate in that, like Swashbuckler, you can just gain a card automatically, right? Like you play it, it has the battle cry of gain the card. So you're putting tempo on the board and gaining the card. This, you still have to do something before you get the card. So you still have to wait a turn before you're gonna get this effect from this card. I mean, the stealth thing is cool for sure. So you're guaranteed to get it unless they have some kind of board clear, which on turn 4, I don't see that really happening. So I think you're pretty much guaranteed to get this, because even if they have a freezing trap, it just says whenever it attacks. So you still have to attack, and you're still gonna get the card before a freezing trap. Well, even if a freezing trap would go off, right? So I guess maybe the only real hard counter would be something like a deadly shot, but I don't know that you're gonna waste a deadly shot on this card. It's likely that this card just gets you 1 extra card. But it sort of does become like a taunt minion in that it's pretty high value target. You know, something like a Fandral. Maybe not as high as a Fandral, but you know, you definitely want to get rid of this thing. And it's somewhat easier than a Fandral since it only has 3 health. A lot more things can kill it. Interesting card. sort of keeping in line with all this weird stuff that they're having Rogue do lately with just getting random class cards, which I don't know if I like, because it's really hard to play against that. You sort of just play the game at that point. You can't really, when you're playing against a Rogue deck like this, you can't play around some things. I mean, you know class cards in your deck, but I mean you have no idea what they're getting, you know? Alright, on to some Paladin cards. So first up we have a spell called Smuggler's Run. It's 1 mana cost spell. Common, says give all minions in your hand +1/+1. I mean, I like it because, you know, it's going along with this whole buff minions in your hand type of thing. Obviously it's conditional on you having things in your hand. If you're running 2 of these in your deck, there's 2 spots that are not minion spots in your deck, and you're probably not playing an entire deck full of minions with a Paladin. You know, Paladin has some strong spells in Consecration, and some other things, but they also have, you know, True Silver Champion, which is typically a staple card of Paladin, and this seems more like a mid-rangey kind of card because it's slow. It doesn't, like I said before, it doesn't do anything on the board. It doesn't add tempo to the board when you play it. So I don't know if this will be played in a deck or not. I'm gonna say it's not that great right now. Okay, next up we have Grime Street Protector, a 7 mana 6/6, very reminiscent of the Ancient Shield Bearer that Warrior got in the Old God set. This is also a rare, but it has Taunt and a Battle Cry, which says give adjacent minions Divine Shield. That's a pretty powerful card. I think it's a cool card. I think it's a good card. Definitely good for a mid-range deck. You know, the only thing is, it's not even really the only thing. I mean, it's a taunt, right? It's not that bad. Maybe for a 7 mana, a 6/6 taunt isn't that great. But its Battle Cry, if you can get that to work, I think is really powerful. So I could definitely see this in a mid-range Paladin deck, especially since, you know, Dr. Boom's been gone ever since, well, Secret Paladin came into being. Mid-range Paladin just disappeared, so I would definitely like to see a resurgence of mid-range Paladin for sure. And I think this would definitely fit the 7-drop spot nicely, so I think it could be a good card. It's a cool card. I like the idea of it. I like the concept. Obviously stats are not premium, but it's not too bad. I mean, even if it's a 6/6 taunt, it's still not too bad. Next we have Grime Street Outfitter, is a 2 mana common 1/1 minion that says Battle Cry, give all minions in your hand +1/+1. I like this card. It's a these 2 mana cards are not terrible in that they're easy to fit in places, even if it's not on turn 2. Obviously it's a turn 2 play. You're still getting something on the board. Granted, it's only a 1/1, but you're still putting tempo on the board. And then, you know, in this instance, you're buffing all the minions in your hand. I think, you know, this could be used for a mid-range deck. This could be used even for an aggro deck, really. Like, I mean, buff a bunch of 1/1 minions in your hand, and then you're playing like 1 and 2 mana, like 2/2s and like 3/4s and stuff like that, or 4/3s. So I don't know. I think it's a decent card. You'll definitely see play. You'll definitely see it in Arena for sure. I think it's a decent card for Arena. Yeah, I like the card. Grime Street Enforcer. This is a 5 mana 4/4, which is pretty poor stats. It's a rare, but it says at the end of your turn, give all minions in your hand +1/+1. So this is another buffing card, you know, keeping in line with all the other grimy goons, faction, family, whatever you want to call it, cards that are giving buffs to minions in your hand. What I do like about these last 2 cards is that it's not just a random minion, or it's not a specific thing, it's all minions in your hand. So it has the Mistcaller effect at the end of every turn, you know, without giving the buff to the cards in your deck as well, just the minions in your hand. Granted, it is an expensive card, the stats are poor, but in a mid-range deck, you know, this can sit in your hand for quite a few turns before you even get to play it, so you can buff it with your other cards that you're playing that are similar to this, and, you know, you can maybe even have a 5 mana 6/6 or 5 mana 7/7 or something like that by the time you play this. Plus then you're still buffing the other stuff in your hand. And I mean, I just keep thinking of having a buffed up Tyrion, having a buffed up Ragnaros Lightlord, even just a buffed up regular Rag. Those are really cool things. So as long as they're in your hand and these things are being played, they're, you know, everything's getting buffed, and that's really scary for your opponent not knowing what's in your hand and what's getting the buffs. So I don't know, it's pretty cool. Granted, you know, Paladin still has the whole equality thing, so I don't know. We'll see. I like these cards though. I think they're cool overall, and I'm kind of excited to see how all this shapes up, and I do hope this is a good mid-range Paladin deck, because honestly I haven't even been playing Paladin for quite a while now, so I wouldn't mind getting back into some Paladin games. Alright, on to Warrior. Warrior, they released quite a few cards this time around. So up first we have a 5 mana 2/7 called Alley Armorsmith. This is a rare card that has Taunt and says whenever this minion deals damage, gain that much armor. I mean, the stats are not good. Basically Yeti worth of stats, but for 5 mana, and it has Taunt. And you have to deal damage with this card in order to gain armor. I'm just not sure. It seems really slow, but as we'll see, there's some other cards that maybe will help this card out. So let's go to the next card. The next card we have is Grime Street Pawnbroker. This is a 3 mana 3/3. Says battle cry, give a random weapon in your hand +1/+1. This card's just not good. I mean, it's completely contingent on you having a weapon in your hand. I mean, you know, giving a Fiery War Axe +1/+1 is good, but you have to have it there first. I don't think this card's good at all. Maybe some people think it's good because it's like an upgrade with a body attached to it, but it's, I mean, completely conditional on you having that first. At least an upgrade if you don't have a weapon. Worst case scenario, you can still play it and you get a weapon, right? So this wouldn't even work with upgrade. Like, if the upgrade was in your hand and you play this, like, you're not getting the +1/+1 on your weapon. I don't know. I think this is a bad card. The stats are weak. Its ability obviously is just not consistent enough to be worthwhile. Alright, next card. We have a 4 mana 4/3, which is, again, terrible stats. Grimy Gadgeteer. It's a common card. At the end of your turn, give a random minion in your hand +2/+2. So, you know, we're still on with that whole buffing things in your hand. Obviously this time is a random minion. It's not all minions. It's not a beast. It's just a random minion in your hand. So you have to have a minion in your hand for this to do anything. This costs 4 mana. Has 3 health. I don't know, the stats are very poor. I don't think it's a good card, honestly. I just, unless there's going to be some kind of weird mid-range taunt warrior deck, which maybe there will be at this point because of all these cards that Blizzard keeps making that keep giving warrior cards taunt. I don't know. We'll see. Honestly, this would be much better if it was a 3 mana 3/4. It would be really good then, but I don't know. I don't think it's that good. Okay, so on to the first warrior weapon, maybe the only warrior weapon, I don't know. But the first one that they've released, it's an epic. It's called Thorium Knuckles. And it says, well, it's a 4 mana 2/3 weapon, which is not good at all. It says, after your hero attacks, give a random minion in your hand +1/+1. So more random minion buffing. This is just a bad card. It's way overcosted for what it is. It's too slow. It just doesn't beat Fiery War Axe. Fiery War Axe is just a much better weapon. And if you're playing some kind of aggressive deck that wants to put a bunch of weapons in your deck, you're not going to put this one in there. Arcanite Reaper is just better. This is just a bad card, which is unfortunate. I think Fiery War Axe makes it hard to make good weapons because it's just such a good card. Like, how are you going to make a better weapon than Fiery War Axe that's not going to be, you know, stupid? It's very difficult. Obviously, like Death Bite, that was it. But a lot of people thought that card was stupid, and you know, it probably was. Unfortunate, but is what it is. I really don't like that it takes the epic slot though either, but I don't like bad higher rarity cards, especially for like the free-to-play players. Like it sucks. You know, you have your epic card slot in your pack be some shitty card, right? I mean, you don't have that much money. Well, it's not even just for free-to-play players. You know, if you don't have much money to spend on the game, but you do want to spend money, or if you're just doing a free-to-play, you know, you're trying to get those good cards. And I mean, yeah, you can use it for dust. It always disappoints me when I get shitty cards out of my packs that are like epics and stuff, and you're just like, wow, why is this even a card to begin with, let alone a card in this rarity slot that I can't even get very often, and I can't even get the good cards I want to get. So whatever. Anyway, end of rant. Next card. We have a 2-mana spell called Stolen Goods. It's a rare card, and it says give a random taunt minion in your hand +3/+3. So this is kind of going back to what I was saying with all these taunt cards they keep giving warrior. I mean, +3/+3 is really good. However, again, it's a spell that does nothing to the board the turn you play it. It's conditional on having a specific type of minion in your hand. It's going to be an interesting deck that utilizes this card and actually makes it work. On the surface, I don't see it being good. It doesn't seem good. If you can get this on the alley armor smith, right, you've got a 5/9 or a 5/10, right? A 5/10 taunt that whenever it deals damage, you gain that much armor. So gaining 5 armor a turn, it's pretty good. But you know, you can't specifically make that happen necessarily unless you empty cards out of your hand and you only have these 2 cards in your hand and you play them in tandem with each other. But we all know that these things don't tend to happen often. I mean, you know, there'll be cases where these things do happen, but and then again, you know, with big minions, they just get killed easily with targeted removal or whatever. It seems like a bad card to me, but we'll see. All right, so on to the neutral cards. We have another neutral legendary, a 3-mana 3/4, so premium stats for a 3-drop. I like that. It's called Auction Master Beardo. And he has a really weird ability, and I don't really understand it, but it says after you cast a spell, refresh your hero power. And I understand it in terms of what it does. I just don't understand it in terms of it being a legendary card. Because so we have this card in Garrison Commander, which is a 3-mana 2/3, I believe. That card's not played ever. So basically that card says you can use your hero power twice this turn, right? Which is similar to this, but I mean, theoretically you could do this more. I don't know. So it's like Caldera Drake, where you can use your hero power as many times as you want per turn, except it's worse than that because it's conditional on you playing a spell first and then using your hero power. But unless your deck is utilizing a bunch of 1-mana spells, I don't know, it just doesn't seem great. Maybe it's a good priest card with all the new priest potions that are 1 mana, combine it with the priest of the feast, or maybe combine it with Auchenai, soul priest, and then you can deal more damage per turn. So maybe it has its uses that I just haven't thought through yet. I don't know, it seems kind of, I don't want to say weak, but it's not exciting to me. But maybe I just haven't figured out how to best implement it. And maybe there's other cards that are going to come out that will make sense with it or something. But I do like the cheap mana cost and the good stat lines with it. You know, 3-mana 3/4s are solid, so I do like that about it. So we'll have to experiment with it. All right, next we have a 4-mana 4/4 called Backroom Bouncer. It's a rare card that says whenever a friendly minion dies, gain +1 attack. So it's a more expensive, I think just slower, less good flesh-eating ghoul because it's more specific, a friendly minion. It's not just any minion. Yeah, and it just takes longer to get out. It's a 4-mana 4/4, so something has to die before it even gets buffed. And then if one of your friendly minions dies, it's a worse evil heckler because it doesn't even have taunt. Overall, I don't think this is a good card. It's not a good card. In Arena, you'll probably see it just because it'll be there and it'll have the offering bonus for a while. Obviously, there's gonna be better cards to pick, so pick those. But you know, if you get a selection of bad cards, you'll pick it sometimes. So, not a good card. Okay, next card is a Murloc. It's 2 mana, 2/1 Blowgill Sniper, and has a battle cry of deal 1 damage. So it's a more expensive Elven Archer. You're paying 1 mana for +1 attack and the Murloc tag. So this combined with what is it, Finja, is not good because it has a battle cry. You don't necessarily want this being pulled out of your deck and into play, because you want the battle cry off of it. Yeah, I don't know, it doesn't seem like a great card. Most of the Murloc cards aren't that great in isolation. They definitely work better together, but even then, it's still a 2 mana, 2/1 that only deals 1 damage when it comes into play. So I don't know that it'll see play, it probably won't. All right, now we have a 2 mana, 2/6, which holy shit, those stats, right? Called Dirty Rat, and it's an epic. It has taunt and a battle cry that says your opponent summons a random minion from their hand. So a card that looked really exciting before you read the text just got really bad. I mean, you don't want to go summoning random stuff from your opponent's hand. I mean, okay, so you could compare this to Death Lord, right? The 3 mana, 2/8 that had taunt. But it had a death rattle of summon a random minion from your opponent's deck. Now, granted, if you're playing against a class that, you know, well, has few minions in that deck archetype, and is more of a spell-heavy archetype, then okay, great. If that's like all over the meta, then maybe this is a good tech card, because your chances of pulling a minion out of their hand aren't very good. But considering Hearthstone is very much a minion-based game, it's just not that good. A lot of times, you could pull out one of their big minions, and then you're sad. You can't even do anything about it. They'll have the initiative the next turn, after you end your turn, and be able to probably kill this off if it's a big minion. Yeah, it's not a good card. This is another card I'm sad that it has an epic rarity value assigned to it, because god damn it, we don't need more shitty cards like this. For this huge, massive stat boost, it has to have some kind of drawback to it, but I think that drawback is enough to make it not see play. All right, next card is a 5 mana 2/2, which from the last card having amazing stats to this card being the worst stats you've ever seen in your life. We have Doppelganger. This is a rare card, but it has a battle cry of summon 2 copies of this minion, which is really interesting to me. I like the idea of this card. Maybe it's not a good card, I don't know, but I like the idea of it, especially with all these cards giving buffs to the minions in your hand. Even on the off chance you get to play this with Ron's Beard on the board. So basically you're getting 6/6 worth of stats over 3 minions, even if you summon this card without having it buffed at all. So 5 mana, 6/6 is what we're talking about. That's pretty good. That's not bad at all. Granted, it's less good against some AoE, but you know, 1 card gets you an instant board, right? So that's a lot of tempo. That's a lot of goodness. A lot of people thought Dr. Boom was stupid until they started playing it and then realized, wow, just having 1 card give you that much value and tempo on the board is pretty good. So at very least, this is 6/6 worth of stats on the board for 5 mana. But if you're playing it in a deck, in these decks that give buffs, you know, a paladin deck with giving buffs to all the minions in your hand, you know, by the time you play this, let's say it's a 3/3, right? So now you're getting 9/9 worth of stats for 5 mana. You get it up to a 4/4, now you're getting 12/12 worth of stats on the board. 1 card for 5 mana. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty cool. You know, we'll have to see if it's a good card. I think it's cool, and I'll definitely experiment with it. I like the idea of it. I think it's a fun card. Next up, we have a card that synergizes with the Doppelganger. It's a 3 mana 2/4 called a Grime Smuggler, and it says battle cry, give a random minion in your hand +1/+1. So this is also a tri-class card. It can only be used by the grimy goons, and no other classes can use it. Meh, it's a meh card. 3 mana 2/4, stats not good. It gives a random minion in your hand +1/+1. I don't like it. I don't think it'll see play. It's not that good. If it was a 3 mana 3/4, it might see play. But being that it's a 2/4, the stats are just too underwhelming. Next we have a smaller Wind Fury Harpy called Foo Master. It's a 5 mana 3/5 with Wind Fury. So the 6 mana 4/5 with Wind Fury never sees play. I don't think this will see play either. it's not a good card. Here we have a 3-mana 4/3 with Taunt, called Hired Gun. So it's a more vanilla-ish card. You probably won't see this in Constructed unless there's some serious Taunt Warrior decks going on that want to try and utilize this card. You'll see it in Arena though, and it'll be okay in Arena. I mean, it won't be amazing, but you know, you'll pick it sometimes. Just a vanilla card to sort of fill things out. And for the last card, we have another vanilla card with very interesting stat line that we've never seen before. With this mana cost anyway, it's a 4-mana 6/3 called Worgen Greaser. So we have seen this stat line in other cards. Justicar True Heart, Ethereal Conjurer. Ethereal Conjurer being a 5-mana card and Justicar being a 6-mana card. Obviously those cards are based off their abilities. They have been statted as such, but this card has no ability whatsoever. I think if this was a 3/6, it would be better, actually, maybe. I don't know, I mean, 6/3 is still something you want to get rid of, right? So, I mean, you're not going to see this in Constructed. It's just not going to be in Constructed. You will see it in Arena. I don't necessarily think it's a good card, but you'll still see it. You'll have to deal with it. And that's the thing, like, once you see it actually played against you, you're like, damn, 6 attack coming at my face next turn. I probably need to deal with this card sooner rather than later. But the thing is, it dies to 2 drops, it dies to 3 drops, so that kind of sucks. So yeah, not a great card, just a vanilla card. It's whatever. So that's it for now. For all the cards they've released within the past week or so. I'll try and do one of these probably every week until the set's released. Oh, one other thing, I did find out how the tri-class discover cards worked. They do discover a random card from each class. So, like, if it's the mage, I will just say this because I don't remember what all the factions are at the moment. So, if it's a grimy goon card, it'll be, you would have a random hunter card, a random warrior card, and a random paladin card to choose between as far as the discover. So with that knowledge, those cards I think are less good, simply because, I mean, there's so many cards from each class, right? And you're only getting one option from each. With that being the way it is, I think it's less likely that you're going to get a good card that you need. You know, I think there's higher percent chance to get just bad choices overall. Whereas if you were able to maybe pick the class you got to discover from first, and then you got to discover 3 cards from that class, that would be a lot better. Or even, I think even if it was just gave you a random class out of those 3 classes to discover 3 possible class cards from one of those classes randomly, I think that would even be better. I think this is the worst the worst way to have it work out of the ways it could work, but that's the way it's working, so take that as you will. All right, so that's all from me for now. I will see you guys later.